Okay, so you want to own a cruise ship. The average passenger pays roughly $150 per day for their ticket. But that number, the one in the advertisement, only represents about half of what the cruise line expects to make from them, because the real business starts after they board the ship. Here's the strange part. In 2020, Carnival Corporation couldn't operate a single cruise for almost 18 months. Their entire fleet sat idle. No passengers, no revenue, still burning enormous amounts of cash every day. They lost roughly $10 billion in a single year. 3 years later, they were profitable again. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how cruise ships make money, why the ticket is often the least important transaction on board, and how an industry that nearly collapsed completely managed to recover faster than almost anyone expected. There are basically 3 levels to this business. At the bottom, small river cruise vessels, 150 to 200 passengers, European waterways, older, wealthier clientele. These ships can cost tens of millions of dollars to build. Margins are relatively thin, operations are seasonal, and routes are limited. Then there's the middle tier, modern ocean cruise ships, 2,500 to 3,000 passengers, Caribbean routes, Mediterranean itineraries. This is where scale starts transforming the economics. And finally, the top tier, the mega ships. Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas reportedly cost around $2 billion to build. It carries over 7,000 passengers alongside more than 2,000 crew members. It has multiple pools, an ice rink, a surf simulator, dozens of restaurants, an entire park on board. And the ship was essentially booked out for its first year before it even entered service. But here's the cost nobody puts in the brochure. A megaship can burn over $1 million in fuel every single day it's moving. And international schedules don't stop just because demand weakens. The ship still sails. There are basically 3 ways in. First, order a new ship directly from a shipyard. Most major cruise ships are built by a handful of companies in Europe. You commit hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars, years in advance. Then wait half a decade for delivery. Second option, buy older ships second-hand. A vessel that originally cost hundreds of millions can eventually sell for a fraction of that price. But there's a catch. Older ships are less fuel efficient, more expensive to maintain, and increasingly outdated compared to modern floating resorts. Passenger expectations evolve quickly in this industry. And then there's the third path, the one that built modern cruising itself. In 1972, Ted Arison bought an aging ocean liner called the Mardi Gras for $6.5 million. On its very first voyage, it ran aground leaving port. Most people would have viewed that as a disaster. Arison rebuilt the business around one simple idea: make cruising affordable and entertaining for ordinary people, not just wealthy travelers. That company became Carnival Corporation. Today, Carnival operates more than 100 ships across multiple brands and carries millions of passengers annually. The modern cruise industry was effectively built by a man whose first ship couldn't leave the harbor without crashing. Now, let's say you own a mid-sized cruise ship, 2,500 passengers, a full itinerary, everything operating normally. Your costs are enormous before a single customer even boards. Fuel alone can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per day. And like airlines, cruise operators have almost no control over oil prices. Then, labor. A ship this size may require over 1,000 crew members working continuously on board. And this is where one of the industry's most important financial structures appears: flags of convenience. Most cruise ships are not registered in the United States or Western Europe. They're registered in places like Panama, Liberia, the Bahamas, which changes the labor laws and tax structures governing the ship. Many entry-level crew members work 10 to 12-hour shifts 7 days a week for wages far below what would be legal illegal under US labor standards. That single structural advantage saves the major cruise companies enormous amounts of money every year. Then, maintenance, insurance, port fees, food, utilities. By the time the ship starts operating, annual costs can already reach hundreds of millions of dollars, which is why occupancy matters so much. An empty cabin still carries almost all the same costs as a full one.
At first glance, cruise companies make money selling tickets. That's true, but tickets are only the entry point into the system. The real business starts once passengers are trapped on board. Casinos, drink packages, Wi-Fi, spa treatments, shore excursions, specialty restaurants, professional photography. Cruise lines generate enormous onboard spending from things people never plan to buy when booking the trip, and those purchases often carry much higher margins than the ticket itself. But even that isn't the deepest layer. The real breakthrough was the private island. Royal Caribbean spent hundreds of millions developing Perfect Day at Coco Cay in the Bahamas. At first glance, it looks like a luxury destination for passengers. Economically, it's something much more important: vertical integration. When passengers visit a normal port, local businesses capture much of the spending: restaurants, bars, tour operators, shops. But on a private island owned by the cruise company, the cruise line captures almost everything. The ship delivers the customers, the island captures the spending, and suddenly the economics of the entire voyage look very different. There are three things most people misunderstand about cruise ships. First, people assume cruises are expensive. In reality, cruises are often surprisingly cheap relative to what's included: transportation, accommodation, food, entertainment. Sometimes the ticket itself is barely profitable because the cruise line knows the real spending starts later. Second, people think crew members experience the ship the same way passengers do. They don't. Most crew live in small shared cabins below deck and work exhausting schedules almost continuously during contracts lasting months at a time. The floating resort passengers experience is, for many crew members, essentially a floating workplace. And third, people assume cruise companies pay substantial taxes. Historically, many have paid extremely low effective tax rates through foreign registration structures and international corporate arrangements. The ships may serve American passengers without necessarily operating under American tax systems. On January 13, 2012, the Costa Concordia struck a reef off the coast of Italy and capsized. 32 people died. More than 4,000 passengers and crew were on board. Investigators later determined the captain had deliberately taken the ship unusually close to shore during an unauthorized maneuver. The evacuation was delayed. The situation spiraled, and one of the largest cruise ships in the world ended up lying on its side in shallow water. The salvage operation took years and cost billions, and the entire disaster reportedly began with a decision that lasted only minutes. That's one of the terrifying realities of this industry. You can spend decades building systems, procedures, and operational discipline, and one catastrophic human decision can overwhelm all of it almost instantly. The greatest risk in cruise shipping isn't usually the ocean itself. It's the people operating the ship. Now imagine the optimistic scenario. You own a successful modern cruise ship. Strong occupancy, heavy onboard spending, efficient operations. The vessel generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue. And once construction debt gets paid down, the ship can remain operational for decades. This is why cruise companies expanded so aggressively during the 2000s and 2010s. The economics looked incredible when everything worked normally. Now, the realistic scenario. A global health crisis suddenly shuts down the entire industry. No passengers, no voyages, no revenue. But the ships still exist. Debt payments continue. Maintenance continues. Crew obligations continue. During COVID, major cruise operators took on enormous amounts of emergency debt just to survive.
Carnival's debt load exploded during the shutdown years. The industry recovered, but the leverage remained. And that's the danger with cruise economics. When things go well, the cash flow is enormous. When operations stop, the fixed costs become brutal almost immediately. Ted Arison started Carnival with a ship that ran aground on its very first voyage. Today, the cruise industry moves tens of millions of passengers every year across floating resorts that cost billions to build. And the companies dominating the industry understood something incredibly important earlier than everyone else. The cruise ticket is not the business, it's the entry fee. Because once passengers board the ship, nearly everything around them is designed to encourage more spending. The casinos, the excursions, the drink packages, the specialty dining, the private islands. The vacation gets people on board. The onboard economy is what makes the industry work.